Friends, we will learn from a test lesson with Rabash. Let's sit down quietly and we will study a test lesson with Rabash. We'll read from tests. This is volume 2, part 5. From the inner light, item 40. And so before this, we will read from part 5, item 40, from the inner light. Afterwards, the light returns to being Mati in Keter, and then both Chub ascend there because of the desire they have. Then you find that there is a great distance between the suns and the light of Gal. For there are two distances between them, Bina and Chokhmah, in which there is no light. Hence, at that time, the light of Chesed rises to Bina, and is called not Mati in Chesed. In that state, the vessel of Chesed returns its interior and gives the 6 lights below in Gvura.
Therefore, when the zone of the Kli of Keter, of second expansion with the male and female, the record of clothing, record of coarseness of the vessel of Keter have to rise to receive their abundance, it is the light of Keter that stands below Malchut of Rosh, turns to them. What does it mean, turns to them? Meaning that it bestows to them all their needs, meaning even Keter. However, it is only while they are with him in Malchut of Rosh, after they are filled with their abundance and descend to the Guf, he immediately turns, the light of Keter, turns his posterior to them, meaning he denies them of the abundance that they need. Next, we must understand that thing. If he denies the abundance from them once more, how has the ascent to the Rosh helped? When they come down, they have nothing. Answer: the thing is that indeed they received all they needed during the ascent, meaning according to the screen in them, which are phase 4 of male and phase 3 of female, the level of that coupling is close to the level of Keter. Elsewhere, he says it's close to, meaning it's vak of the degree. I repeat, and they descended to Keter of the Guf with all this great abundance. They descended. However, we must therefore understand what was the benefit in that root Keter turning its posterior. Before that, he said that they descended. It has nothing. Later, he says that they ascend. When they descend, they have nothing. So he says, yes, they do come down with the abundance. Now it's the other way around. Before, he said, in the Rosh they have the abundance. They came down, they don't have anything. If that's the case, he asks, what's the benefit of ascending if when they descend, they have nothing? Answer, they do have something. If they do have it, he repeats there, in that case, what was the advantage of Keter who has his posterior below? That's what he asks again. However, we must therefore understand what was the benefit in that root Keter turning its posterior to the zone that they descended. Let's say, if you say that he dominates them, he gives them. Indeed, much is done by that. Because of it, the vessel of Keter of the Guf must be in the phase of posterior toward Chokhmah as well, because this vessel is indeed the vessel of that root Keter from the time of the first expansion. After all, it's from her, from this vessel, that he departed, the light of Keter, and rose to the Osh. By doing so, the light of Keter operates on her, on this vessel of his, when the light of Keter is in the Osh, that came out of the vessel, as she equalizes with him as he stands at the Rosh. The way it was in the Rosh, they were together. Now that the light that belongs to the vessel of Keter descended, also similar to the light of Keter that was in the Rosh. For this reason, the vessel too must be in a state of posterior to all the 9 Sefirot below her. This means that she does not give them from that abundance that she received in the Rosh, except to the posterior, meaning by denying them the illumination of Chokhmah. What does it say here? He says, since the vessel of Keter receives its light by the light of Keter, and since the light of Keter faces upwards and its posterior is facing downwards, therefore the vessel of Keter that rose to the Osh, who is the vessel of Keter? The zone that ascended to the Osh, phase 4/3 that ascended to the Osh and received fulfillment. While being in the Osh, they are like Keter. How is the Keter? His face is facing upwards and his posterior facing below. Therefore, the zone of Keter that descended in the vessel of Keter of Guf, it says that the light of Keter faces upwards and his posterior are facing downwards. It works on its vessel that was there before it ascended, on the zone of Keter that are there. And even though they have the illumination of Chokhmah, the light of Gadlut, greatness, because it ascended there, but when they descended, they stand with the face upwards and its posterior facing downwards, and even the light that is in the vessel of Keter shines to the lower one through the posterior. You find that when I say that it's expanding in Keter, what can shine in the degree? Only the posterior. What is the posterior? He explains here. Panim, face, he calls here Chokhmah, and the Achoraim, posterior, he calls Chasadim. You find that when I say expanding in Keter, there is no Chokhmah in all of the degree. Why? Because the light of Keter was facing upwards and its posterior downwards, so the lower one. It bestows only a posterior called Vak, and it dominates on the vessel, which will be only Vak. I would understand. What are you asking? You're asking me why the vessel of Keter does not need it? I understand your question.
The vessel of Keter now has to be with its face upwards and backside downwards.
Why? Why should the vessel of Keter have its face upwards and its posterior back downwards? If I say that the zone of Keter on phase 4/3 of the vessel of Keter, this is the highest quality, uppermost quality that rose to the Rosh Galgalta and became in the Rosh Galgalta phase 4/3 and returned and descended below to Keter, to the Keter of phase 4/3. It has to be phase 4/3 Chokhmah to shine in the vessel of Keter. Why would the light of Chasadim shine suddenly? So he tells us that since the light of Keter did not descend back down, why did it not descend back down? Because you don't have here phase 4 of coarseness, only phase 4 of clothing. So I know it's above. Additionally, it tells us that everything that the lower one receives, it receives through this light. Because of the cascading, it was before them, mostly, let's say. Now, the light of Keter that did not descend in the vessels, so in truth, its posterior is facing downwards, meaning its light of Keter does not illuminate below. However, the judgment illuminates from it. Why? You can make a hypothesis. Why does he dominate or control Keter? His Keter does not have the light of Chokhmah. It does not dominate. What does it mean if the vessel of Keter of the upper degree dominates? The degree you say is Vak is what dominates. He says, since it dominates his vessel that was in the beginning, therefore it controls it. Therefore, when it expands in the Keter, then already the Keter that stands above allows it to illuminate with Chokhmah. So what will illuminate in the vessel of Keter? Chasadim. So I'm asking if he can control this great vessel. Certainly, he can control the smaller vessels. Why am I saying expanding in Chokhmah? Yeah, expanding in the vessel of Chokhmah, shining in the vessel of Chokhmah, the light of the face, and not of the posterior, Chasadim. That's why I wish to interpret it this way. Since the light of Keter did not descend. Why? Because it lacks phase 4 of coarseness. Phase 4 of clothing, it does shine. It can be that if it shines here in phase 4/3, the light of Chokhmah, the lower one would want to extend it, to draw it, from above down. Therefore, as long as it expands in the Keter, there's no phase 4 of coarseness, it controls the vessels. It gives them because it protects them. But when the phase 4/3 of coarseness is refined, yes, but phase 3 of coarseness, it does let them shine. That's how we can interpret. We learn from phase 4 of clothing, there's fear, let's say, that it will extend the light below. That's why there's no Chokhmah. In Parzuf Sag, there's phase 3 of clothing. Also, there's fear that it can extend it below. Also, the light shines in the posterior. Yeah.
So it's what it means that Keter is the cause.
But no, it turns out that when the vessel of Keter illuminates, what can it illuminate below? Only Chasadim. Who causes that? Light of Keter. It's the result. And there in the Keter of Sag, it will also be the result. Because of the same reason, because it's only clothing and not coarseness. Just like the light of Keter says, of course it has the light of Keter, only the posterior facing downwards to the lower one. And that's why he says, also the phase 4/3 of the vessel of Keter, they have Chokhmah. However, they don't bestow down below. Who causes them to bestow below? If it would bestow below from phase 4 of clothing. The quality of Chokhmah can also extend from above to down as well, but it shines only in Chasadim. Chasadim in general are involved with bestowal, not in reception, so maybe they can extend it. You'll understand better if you have a question. Since the zone of Keter was together with Keter up above, and it controls the vessel, then they are like it. The way it has its posterior below, and it has Keter, and it has Chokhmah. You have to learn what's confusing here. We're talking about the vessel of Keter, and the vessel of Chokhmah, and the vessel of Binah, and the vessel of Zahan, and the vessel of Malchut. You have 5 vessels. It comes and gives you a rule. But generally speaking, we have only 2 lights, Chokhmah and Chasadim in Keter, Chokhmah and Chasadim in Chokhmah. Wherever there's light, it's light. It has 2 lights. That's when I said that the vessel of Keter illuminates in the posterior, meaning Chokhmah there is there illuminates only Chasadim. When I say that it expands in Chokhmah, it can even be the light of Binah. It's important to me. There, Chokhmah shines. What comes from Binah is a different matter. You have to explain why. There are vessels of Chokhmah in Chasadim. That is also confusing. Clear?
They
Why?
can't.
Just like why? Why? Just like in Keter. Keter itself has light, except it does not bestow it below. No, you're speaking about the light of Keter.
There's vessel of Keter of Guf also.
We also speak of vessels of Keter of Guf.
The lower ones cannot receive Chokhmah. Where can they not receive from Zon?
Again, when I say expanding in Keter, listen closely. Now in the vessel of Keter, you have phase 4 over 3. Understand? So he says, when it expands in Keter, it's expanding in Keter, then the entire degree that was before the light of Chokhmah must depart. Why? The light of Keter, the vessel of Keter, has control as a result of its light of Keter that it will not bestow anything but Chasadim. You find that the entire degree now, we're speaking about Partzuf Ab. We have to speak through an illustration, an example. There's a lot of Chokhmah, let's say the lot of Chokhmah, in Zeranpin, the lot of Chokhmah. So Keter doesn't let it illuminate Chokhmah at all. But Zeranpin, even Netzach, let's say Gvura, it does not have Chokhmah. What does she have? Only Chasadim. The Chokhmah that was there must depart. Who causes it? Keter. In that case, you should look at what he wants to emphasize for you. When I say a lot of Chokhmah in the vessel of Keter, I don't mean the height of the degree, only this, like a cliff. When I say expanding in Keter, all the degrees, all the Sefirot that had light of Chokhmah must depart from them, from this quality called Chokhmah. That's the point. When they become expansion in Keter, then already you have phase 3 of coarseness. And phase 3 of coarseness in the degree, then again, all the degrees that had any yearning for Chokhmah, for whatever reason, we'll see later, they again receive Chokhmah. They don't receive Chokhmah in phase 4, or Chokhmah in phase 3, or Chokhmah in phase 2. They receive Chokhmah, I'm talking about Zeranpin. They receive Chokhmah that exists in phase 1. It's two things. You ask, why does he say that the son of Keter did receive wholeness? Why can he ask him, what does he care? He explains it. If they use Chokhmah, and since there's no coarseness phase 4, there's no phase 4 of coarseness, they can extend something from this degree, that's the lower ones. But when there is phase 4, it only shines Chasadim. Only after phase 4 over 3 was refined, and phase 3 of coarseness does exist in the degree, then they know there has to be a screen, so they receive. Without coarseness, you receive nothing. So Chokhmah can illuminate, and there will be no malfunction.
But the 4 of clothing, I see, can shine something without the screen of 4 of coarseness. Therefore, he guards them. They continue their vessel. They had reshimot, records. But from now onwards, something can be.
And he himself cannot be there?
He took that on the records. Again, what should we understand from this? Why did he receive Chokhmah? Why doesn't he shine? This question we have to interpret. Again, why 4-3, like you ask? 4-3 did receive Chokhmah. To bestow downwards Chokhmah when 4 shines can't happen. The lower ones don't have level 4. They only have a smaller degree, let's say phase 1. So we learn this. When there is an expansion in Keter over 4 of clothing and 3 of coarseness, then the vessel of Zeranpin, which has only phase 1 of coarseness, not more, can't use Chokhmah. Why? Since now in Keter shines the 4 of clothing with Chokhmah, so they can receive something for over 4. Not necessarily for the 4th phase, but the aspect that the phase that they don't have coarseness of the screen. However, when there's nothing that shines on 4 of clothing, then the lower ones cannot receive from them. There's a difference between 4-3 themselves and the lower ones that want to receive now that 4-3 bestows to them. So what's 4? Clothing without screen of coarseness. So they can, even in terms of phase 1, they can receive something as it has no coarseness. That's what we should say.
That's why they draw only Chasadim.
Therefore, the Keter doesn't shine when it shines to 4. Then the lower one cannot see that he has Chokhmah. What does the lower one see? Only Chasadim.
The entire degree.
In every degree, we learn that. That's what he says. I'm talking about Zeranpin now. We'll see that later. So you're asking what is Keter without Keter of the vessel of flavors, the coupling that was made on the Te'amim. How can Chokhmah is already be a vessel of Nekudot? Bina is already a vessel of Nekudot. In Zeranpin, from 1 degree, they divide into pieces. He's asking, what does it mean, Keter and lower 9? All of the 9 are already Nekudot, dots. And the vessel of Keter is a complete degree. The Parzuf of Te'amim is called vessel of Keter.
So there is Chokhmah.
Yes. So I'm saying this is one phase. If to understand things better, I'll explain. The same question he asks, what are the lower 9 Sefirot of Keter? Who are we talking about? Don't forget that we are only talking about the Malchut. That in the vessel of Keter, who's the receiver? Malchut, who has 3 and 4, 3. So the 4 of the phases of direct light, she's the receiver. What are the first 9 of this light of Ab? It is called one vessel. So when I say Chokhmah, it means there's 10 Sefirot there. In terms of 4 phases of direct light, she's the receiver. She has a screen, this Malchut. 3, 2. If I say that Malchut has first 9 Sefirot, in first 9 Sefirot, we're not talking about that. We're talking about what the Malchut receives. And that too is confusing.
So when I say expanding in Keter, what is that?
There's 10 Sefirot.
In Tamim or in dots?
It's Te'amim, yes.